Did you know you can get paid to vote? And before you ask, yes, it's totally legal. I've done it myself, and in just a minute, I'm going to share with you how I got paid $1,000 just to vote. And here's the best part. You can too. I mean, politicians make money when they vote. In 2016, I and about 63 million other Americans went to the polls and voted for President Donald Trump. Spoiler alert, he won. Just a few short months later, Donald Trump worked with Congress to pass one of the largest tax cuts in history. But it wasn't a regular old tax cut for you and me. It was for corporations, which saved corporations billions of dollars. And many of those corporations decided to take the money they were saving from their Donald Trump tax cut and give it back to their employees. The company I worked for back then was one of them, and they gave each of their employees $1,000. It wasn't actually cash. They put it in my paycheck, but, you know, it's a much better visual. I voted for Trump. Trump cut taxes. My company saved money. I got $1,000. I got $1,000 simply by voting for the right candidate. Had I not voted for Donald Trump in 2016, or had the election gone some totally different way, I wouldn't have got that money. In fact, things would have been way worse off, because that $1,000 isn't the only money I made with my vote. I got paid a lot more for voting. I also got money back in my federal income taxes. Mortgage rates were much lower, which prompted a real estate boom, which increased the value of my property. The price of my home skyrocketed, as did my net worth, all because of the person I voted for president. My net worth literally doubled in 4 years because of my vote. Your vote can do the same for you. In the upcoming election, you too have a chance to get paid to vote. And you could make a lot more money than you ever dreamed. Right now, the average price of gasoline is $3.44 a gallon. If you have a 15-gallon tank, which is about average, and you fill your tank once a week, also about average, you're looking at about $2,700 per year. And that's not counting vacations or road trips or just cruising around on a Friday night looking for chicks. I don't know. Do people still do that? Probably not. Now, in 2020, when Donald Trump was president, the average price of gas was $2.25. If you had that same 15-gallon tank and you still only filled it once a week, over the course of a year, that's $1,755. That's a savings of almost $1,000 back in your pocket simply because of the person that you chose to be president of the United States with your vote. And that's just one expense. When you factor in eggs and bacon and baby formula and pretty much everything else you're shopping for nowadays, the prices are drastically higher than they were 4 years ago. So if you vote accordingly, you could bring all those prices down, and all of that money that you save goes right back into your bank account. You're getting paid to vote. I mean, seriously, if this goes the right way, every American could see a substantial lifestyle shift in the right direction just by picking the appropriate person for president. But here's something else that's exciting, especially if you're a service worker. Like really, really, really exciting. President Donald Trump has just adopted a brand new policy position he calls no tax on tips. If you're a waiter or a waitress or a bellboy or a bartender or an Uber driver or DoorDash, whatever it is, if you survive on tips, listen carefully because this is very important.
I will eliminate taxes on tips for restaurant workers and hospitality workers and anyone else relying on tips. No more taxes on tips. No taxes on tips.
No tax on tips. What does that mean? It means no tax on tips. Look, I was a waiter for years. I totally get it. As a waiter or a waitress, you're paid way below minimum wage, and your tips are supposed to make up the rest of your income. And those tips, which are supposed to be a gift from patrons for service that was above and beyond, are taxed, making it basically regular old income, reportable income. Taxable income. Donald Trump says waiters and waitresses and Uber drivers and bartenders will not be taxed on tips. What does that mean? All that money on your tips that you were paying to taxes, you'll now be paying to yourself. And all you have to do is vote for Donald Trump for president. Now I know what you may be thinking. Wait a minute. Didn't the other candidate come up with something similar? Didn't Kamala Harris also say no tax on tips? I mean, some would say she stole it.
To raise the minimum wage and eliminate taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers.
Just because someone says something doesn't mean they're going to follow through. The truth is, on Donald Trump's campaign website, he has clearly laid out his policy, which includes no tax on tips. How do I know? I went to his website and I checked out his policy, and it clearly states no tax on tips. Kamala's website, well, there isn't actually any specific policy information about no tax on tips, or any specific policy information of any kind. Look, you can meet Kamala Harris. Okay, if you want to do that, you can meet Tim Walz. Okay, you can take action. You can go to an event, or you can go to a store and buy something. But there's absolutely nothing on her website about policy, and certainly nothing that says she's going to follow through on her promise of no tax on tips. In fact, some of the things that Kamala Harris and her best buddy Joe Biden have done over the past 4 years would lead people to believe that the opposite is true. That not only will she not follow through on her promise of no tax on tips, but she is actively pursuing a new tax strategy which taxes tips even more. Look at this Fox News article from 2023. Biden's IRS plans to crack down on waiters' tips. So it appears that not only is Kamala Harris plagiarizing Donald Trump's entire platform, but she's also lying about it. A presidential candidate stealing and lying just to get elected? Have you ever heard of such a thing? Look, I have long suggested that there's only two good reasons to vote for anybody, and neither one of them has to do with pronouns. When picking a president or a senator or a congressperson or a governor or any leader, there's really only two things that you want to keep in mind. Number one, which person will keep you alive the longest? Because if you're not alive, nothing else matters. Which candidate will be better at protecting our borders or bringing down crime or putting violent criminals away? Which one's going to keep drugs off of our streets? Which one's going to keep us out of foreign wars? Which one's going to keep us from getting nuclear bombs dropped on us by our enemies? Which candidate will be tough and will stand up to the evildoers so that they don't do evil deeds like, ending our lives? Staying alive is your number one priority. It's your number one campaign issue. If you're dead, literally nothing else matters. If you're dead, it doesn't matter who you can or cannot marry. If you're dead, it doesn't matter whether or not you can smoke marijuana legally. If you're dead, it doesn't matter whether you can get an abortion. If you're dead, it doesn't matter which pronouns you use. If you're dead, it doesn't matter which bathroom you're going to. If you're dead, it doesn't matter how you identify. Because you're dead, you identify as a corpse. And the second thing you want to look for in a candidate is who's going to allow you to make and keep as much of your own money as possible. Because if you're going to be alive for a while, you're really going to need some money. Food, gas, clothing, shelter, entertainment, the odd trip to the beach every summer. It all costs money. You're going to need some cash. Take it from me. I've been alive for a very, very long time. And money is a necessity. And as I've experienced in the past, and as I believe I can predict in the future, I know which candidate is going to keep you alive and put more money in your pocket in the next election. I mean, it's right there on their website. So do yourself a favor. This year, when you go to the polls, make it worth your while. Don't just vote, get paid to vote.